the recording.
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, so welcome those who are in here now and those who will be watching this later. This is the 2022-2023 first LEGO League Challenge Superpowered Qualifier webinar, where we're going to talk about all kinds of fun stuff relating to your qualifying events. We've got with us tonight Taylor, the program delivery partner for Alabama, who will be talking about basically the general event as it's going to go for most of you. We also got Chris Barrow, who is our head referee for the state, and he's going to be talking a little bit about what you can expect in terms of robot game type things. And then we've got me, Drew Wissenant. I am the judge advisor for the state, and I'll be talking about judging type things. I've got a bunch of documents pulled up that I'll get to when we need them, but I'm going to turn over to Taylor, who's going to start by giving you an event overview.
Okay, so as I'm sure you figured out by now, every team in our state has the opportunity to participate in a qualifying event. So everyone by now should have received their assignments for their qualifier, so you should know when and where you're going. We have 4 different qualifiers this year. They're all in January, January 14th, 21st, and 28th. We have one in Hampton Cove on the 14th. We have one in Mobile and one at UAH on the 21st. And then we have the one in Fort Payne on the 28th. And from there, some number of teams from each of those events will get to advance to our state championship event, which is in February, also in Fort Payne. February 18th, right? Drew, does that date sound right? I think that's right.
Sure, let's say about that.
I know, just giving the full picture, right? So the qualifiers are all pretty well, they're structured all kind of the same way. And if you've been to a qualifier with us before, it's going to look very similar. The general kind of schedule for the day, usually we have teams come in, we open the doors usually around 7, and we hope to have teams kind of checked in and ready to go by about 7:30, and then we jump into sometime between 7:30 and 8, a coaches meeting where all of the team coaches will get to meet primarily with our head referee, Chris, but also Drew, you may step in as judge advisor and give some info as well. But that is if you've got like last minute clarifying questions, or if those key volunteers need to share some specific information, that's when that will happen.
And I'll say it's not specifically going to be Chris and me. It's whoever the head referee and judge advisor at that event are.
True. Sorry. I was like, y'all are going to be at all the events. That's impossible because there are 2 on one day. So yes, it'll be whoever your head ref and judge advisor are for your event. And then after that, you usually jump into judging sessions. I know Drew will talk more about judging, but you have a block of judging. You do all your judging at once. We have that consolidated model we switched to a couple of years ago. So you'll be in a room with some judges at some point in the morning. Usually judging runs about 8 to maybe 11 or so at the most. Probably a smaller window than that, though, given the size of the qualifiers. But at some point during that time frame, you'll have your judging session and you'll have a practice match. And during that practice match, we treat it like a real robot round. So you're timed and everything. You come in, there's someone on the other side on the other table there. And then some people confuse that. We will also have a practice table set up at the event as well, where you can like sign up for like a block of time to practice runs or calibrate or something. But when you have that official scheduled practice time, we run it like a real round. So basically in the morning, we're handling judging and we're handling that practice round. And then usually we do opening and then lunch. It's probably what the schedule like. So we'll have like opening ceremony where we introduce all the teams, and it's just kind of our big sort of welcome. And that's when things are actually kind of visible for spectators. So like if you have parents, grandparents, whoever wanting to come watch, there's not a lot for them to see or do while judging's going on. They can't go in the judging room, anything like that. So we like to start like opening and then have all the visible stuff after that kind of all happening so that you can tell people like, hey, here's the good time to arrive and actually see stuff. But yeah, we'll have opening, and then Drew, do you have something you were going to say?
Yeah, I think you said that backwards. We have lunch and then opening.
Okay, I want to say we've done it both ways. It makes more sense that lunch would be first. So
Yeah, you do. Yeah, lunch is usually like as soon as you're done judging and as soon as you're done with your practice round, like after that, your time is your own until the opening ceremony.
That
But
makes
we do have time set aside for lunch.
yeah, okay. So lunch, then opening, so that you have all the kind of public stuff happening from then on. So after that opening ceremony, and that's maybe up to 30 minutes max. We try to keep it kind of short to keep the schedule flowing. Then we'll start those actual robot rounds. Your team will get to play 3 robot rounds. We try to space out where you are in each kind of flow of a given round, so to maximize your time between rounds. So you've got time if your robot just needs some work on it, something falls off or whatever, and you need to work on it before the next round. We try to maximize that time, but just depending on how the schedule falls, it might be that you've only got 20 minutes until your next run for, between round 1 and round 2 or something. So you'll have the full schedule that morning and you'll know, and you can kind of plan for that. We do try to maximize it. But anyway, you play 3 rounds. Highest score is what ultimately counts. We don't average them or anything like that. Like you basically are getting 3 tries to do your best. And then also during that time, like I said, we have that practice table open. So if you need during that time in between runs, you need to go do something, tweak and practice, you have that practice field you can sign up for times on. And then other than that, it's just a good time for the kids to kind of go around and talk to the other teams, learn more about the other projects, things like that. It's a good time for some socializing and stuff too, as well as in the morning in between, your judging and practice and all that. And then we get through that. After we finish the rounds, there's a bit of time needed. Drew, is that time kind of reduced now, like before we can do awards under this judging model?
It depends on the event.
So typically after the robot rounds finish and we'll start kind of tearing down the fields, usually there's a gap of time before we can do the award ceremony, just because the judges just got those last scores and need to finalize some things. So we try to do at our events, we might play some music and the kids can come out, and dance on the floor, or sometimes we have like a high school team come in and play some games or set up some games and things for the kids. So we try to do something fun to fill that time. And then we do our award ceremony. Teams get trophies. We should have pins this year that every student on every team will get a pin, so they get some sort of recognition individually. That's pretty much the whole run. Your qualifier manager, the people running whichever qualifiers you're attending, should send you they'll send you information about like ordering or pre-ordering like box lunches. They will have some sort of lunch option, but you're always also welcome to just kind of do your own thing. Order pizza or have a parent go run and get something, or bring lunches with you, or whatever you want to do. But we always try to offer something as well. And usually, not always, depends on the event, but usually, especially if it's in like one of the events that's in a school, they tend to sell concessions and stuff. So that's another thing that your qualifier manager will send more info out about. Drew, anything else?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. So that is a qualifier.
Are there any questions at this phase, just kind of on the overall event structure and kind of how the day is going to go? All right. In that case, we will roll into, I guess we'll go into my section, since the first thing you do in the day is judging. So I'm going to share my screen because I've got some documents pulled up. Let's do it this way. So all the documents I'm going to be referencing are on the resource library on the first homepage. And if you don't know how to get there, if you are on the first Inspires page, we go to programs, first LEGO League, game and season, and we are in the challenge season materials, and it gets me to this page. So one of the things that a lot of newcomers to first LEGO League Challenge and a lot of veterans even overlook is that it is not a robotics competition. It is a science, technology, engineering, and mathematics competition. The robot is only one component of what we're doing. And so people will tend to hone in on the robot and just totally overlook it, the rest of it. But if you look at your overview, there's 4 components to it that you're judged on. You've got your core values, your robot design, your robot game, and your innovation project. The robot game is the part that's visible and it's out there with the rounds where everybody can see it. And Chris is going to talk more about that. But at the end of the competition, that's only 1/4 of your total score. The other 3/4 of your score is coming from judging. So all that gets averaged in together, and that's how we determine awards and rankings and advancement and all that good stuff. And so this one pager is the overview, and this comes out of just the overview document. As we get the updates and clarifications, score calculator, participation rules. Not a lot in here. This kind of gives you an overview of any, what to expect at a competition, a little bit of that, a little bit on the awards and advancement, the robot game rule book. This is probably one of the more important documents. This is your rubric. So you got your 3 rubrics. You got a rubric for each of the 3 areas that aren't the robot game, one for core values, one for the innovation project, one for robot design. And then we've also got our judging session flow chart. So in terms of judging, these are the 2 most important documents you can refer to. So every team will have a judging session. A judging session lasts 30 minutes. And the judging session starts basically as soon as you walk in the door, as soon as the team walks in the door. So we open with a little 2-minute period where the team will be welcomed. They will be setting up, they will be talking with the judges. Your setup is built into that 30-minute session. So that first 2 minutes is really all you have to set up, because once that 2 minutes is over, it's time to start the presentations. You should expect 2 to 3 judges in a judging room. If all goes according as planned, there will be 3 judges in the room, but you might be in a situation where your room only has 2. That's just the way it works out sometimes. So the team will do their welcome, they'll get set up, and they will, talk to the judges. During this time, the judges are mostly looking at the team's core values, just when we get to the rubrics. The next 10 minutes, so we got 5 and 5, are all about the project. The team will have 5 minutes to do their presentation of their innovation project, and then they will have a 5-minute period for question and answer. This is one of those things where this is not really a hard 5 minutes. It's best if it is exactly 5 minutes, but if you go a little bit over, the judges aren't going to stop you. The only time they would stop you is if you get really close to eating up, a good chunk of this time too. So the best thing you can do here is to make sure you're in that 5-minute window so that the judges aren't having to stop you. And then the judges do have their 5 minutes of Q&A. And the whole point of these 2 pieces here are to help the judges fill out their rubric. The point of the presentation is to help the judges fill out their rubric. The easier time the judges have to fill out the rubric based on the innovation project presentation, the better you're probably going to do on the rubric. If you make it difficult for the judges to fill out the rubric, they're looking for information that wasn't obvious in your presentation. They're having to ask really detailed questions to get just a little bit of information out of you. That's going to make it harder for them to fill out the rubric, and it's going to make it harder for them to give you the score that you actually earn. So this is a good time to talk about the big thing I tell teams is if you don't bring it up with the judges, it didn't happen. You can say, oh, we talked to a researcher, we looked in this book, we looked in this magazine, we went to this place. But if you only tell the judges, yeah, we looked on Google for this, that's all the judges know. So it's really important that whatever you want the judges to mark on this rubric, that it comes across, if not during these 5 minutes, definitely during these 10 minutes. So that 10-minute chunk of time is all about the innovation project. The next chunk of time is basically the exact same thing, only instead of the innovation project, it's about the robot design. And so the judges here are looking for what process did you use to design your robot? And it's looking at things like, on one level, it's not what did you design to accomplish this mission, it's what missions did you prioritize and why did you prioritize them? How did you prioritize what you prioritized? And then from there, it's a matter of, and that gets at the strategy. And then from there, it's a matter of, okay, so you strategize these, and so what did you engineer in your solution, and how did you go about that process? Some teams in First Lego League Challenge use a Scrum process or a Kanban process and go full agile on it, or lean, and we'll go into, we have this detailed process. Some teams have set up software repositories where they are collaborating on a shared code base where the individual students can then draw out common functions and common procedures to build their robot code. And so that is all outlined in the robot design rubric. And it's looking at a lot of things. It's primarily looking at, your engineering process, your strategy. One of the things that will ding a lot of teams is the code. And it's not because they have bad code, it's because they don't bring their code for the judges to see. If the code is on the robot, cool, but the judges don't know what that looks like. So printouts of the code are super helpful. And it's one of those things where anything you can do to make it easier for the judges to fill out this rubric, the better they can score you. If they can't find information, or they have a hard time and have to look for the information, it's going to be difficult for them to, say, well, this team had a partially clear mission strategy because we couldn't discern exactly what the strategy was. We kind of got bits and pieces of it, versus, oh, I know exactly what they were going for. That's a clear mission strategy. I know exactly how they chose their missions and why they chose the missions they did. And so that 10 minutes. Yeah.
Question online.
Yeah.
So a couple questions. First, is the coach in the room with the kids during these two events?
Oh, yeah, they can. Yeah, the judges, the coaches are absolutely allowed in the room.
Okay. And then my other question is, should I imagine PowerPoint with a projector and a screen, or not?
It's a good question. Do not plan for having any technology capabilities at all. We cannot guarantee that any room will have a computer or a projector.
Okay. And so you mentioned, I think you mentioned printout. So is it okay to, build it in PowerPoint, print it out a bunch of times for the judges?
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely fine.
Cool. Okay,
So,
thank you.
So that's a good point to bring up. It is, you can give the judges whatever you want to give them. However, do not expect the judges to refer back to what you give them, which sounds counterintuitive, but it's a matter of, if it doesn't come up during the judging session, it doesn't matter. So it's good to be like, oh, the handouts are really good for the judges to be like, I remember the team said something about this. What was it? Let me go look. Not a, oh, they didn't even talk about this in their presentation. They must have run out of time. The judges are not going to use your materials like that. So that's a good question. And then, so we go through the innovation project, we go through the robot design, that takes up, we are at 22 minutes. So we have 8 minutes left. We have a 3-minute period where you'll reflect on core values. The judges will ask questions kind of about the core values. And that all goes back to this first rubric, where we're looking at the first core values of discovery, innovation, impact, inclusion, teamwork, and fun, and how the team exhibits that. So a lot of that's going to be, the judges just kind of watching the team in the room and how they talk about their season. And so there's not really a lot of time devoted to core values. The idea is that you should be incorporating the core values into everything you do. So it should be obvious from your innovation project how you worked the core values into your innovation project. And from the robot design, how did you work your core values into your robot design processes? And so by the time we get to the reflection, the judges should have seen how the team exhibited these qualities through their prior work. And then the last 5 minutes of the judging session is for feedback. And what's going to happen here is the judges will give feedback to the team right then and there. They'll tell the team, something they really liked or were impressed by, and they'll give the team something they can work on. And a lot of judges will ask, before we get started, back in this first 2-minute window, a lot of judges will ask, but when we go into this, is there something you're looking for specific feedback about? There's no guarantee they'll do that, but a lot of judges do that. And they try to give that feedback here. And that's helpful because, especially at the qualifier level, because if the team ends up advancing, they right then and there have something they can work on to improve for the state competition. So after that 30-minute window, the judges will deliberate. They will fill out that rubric together. And they will submit their scores to me, the judge advisor, whoever the judge advisor is at your event. And then that's it for judging for the day. You are, for the rest of the day, you are only focused on your robot rounds. And then the judges are also waiting on the robot rounds. So we get 3/4 of your judging from this session, and then we wait for the robot round scores to come in. And then everybody gets all their scores in, and we determine who the winning teams are for certain awards that way, who's advancing that way, and then we deliberate based on what the judges saw to see who win, which teams win which awards. And you can read more about what the awards are. All the events will have the required awards, and then some of the optional awards will be up as well. And First Lego League Challenge, our goal is that 30 to 50% of teams at an event will get a trophy. But just because you got a trophy doesn't mean you advance. Just because you advance doesn't mean you get a trophy. They are different criteria. And the reason for that is that most of the trophies are targeting a very specific thing. Like, oh, your innovation project was great. Let's say you had the best innovation project for anybody there, but your robot design wasn't great, and your robot scores in the robot game also weren't great. You would not be a good candidate to advance. For advancing teams, we look for well-rounded teams across all 4 areas. So if you do really, really well in one area to the detriment of the other 3 areas, you might win the award for that area, but it doesn't mean you'll advance. We tend to prefer well-rounded teams to teams that do really well in one area. Taylor, am I missing anything on judging?
No, not that I can think of.
So that's kind of the overview of the judging process. Are there any questions on that before we continue on?
So you talked about advancement.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that happens a couple of weeks after the qualifiers or a month or so after?
So generally, let me check the calendar because now it's important. So the qualifiers happen those 3 Saturdays in January, and then state is February 18th. So 1, 2, 3 weeks after the last qualifier, I think. Most teams who advance will be told at their qualifier during the awards ceremony. What we usually do is we identify advancing teams and we identify wildcard teams. And the wildcard teams are not strictly advancing. What we do with them is we put all of the wildcard teams from all of the qualifiers into a bucket. And then the Sunday after the last qualifier, if we have spots to fill at state, because let's say the event on January 14th, we were anticipating having enough teams to advance 5 teams, but enough teams had to back out last minute. We only advanced 4 teams. We now have an open spot at championship, and we want to be able to fill that. So we pull one of the wild cards out. So if you're an advancing team, you will know on the day of your qualifier. If you're a wild card team, you will know on January 29th. And state is February 18th.
Okay, thanks. And state is the last stop?
Sort of. So state is this is where it's tricky to explain. With First Lego League Challenge competitions, the hierarchy stops at your state. So you advance from a qualifier to the state championship, and you can win the state championship or win awards of the state championship, whatever. There are also postseason events that you can be invited to. Alabama, we have 2 invitations to an open invitational in Arkansas, and we have 1 invitation to an invitational event in Massachusetts. So we have 3 total. We do not have a World Festival invite this year, but we do have those 3 invitations. I'm not sure what the dates are. Arkansas is usually in mid-May. I'm not sure when the Massachusetts event will be, but those invites will most likely go to the teams that place basically our Champions Award finalists and winner at state will be the teams that get the first invite on those. So it's not advancing to those, but it is postseason play, kind of like how college bowl games used to be for football. Other questions? One more resource that might be helpful from this page is there is this video that is preparing for your superpowered event. It's a little 4-minute video, and it's just linked over here on this preparing for your event. This page has all the great resources, but definitely something that goes back to what Taylor was talking about. So I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over.
Well,
oh, no.
Or you could, if you don't mind leaving it up there, since I don't have anything else to show, we could also look at maybe the robot game rules book. All right, great.
I will leave that up, and I will turn it over to Chris. Let me just mute myself.
Cool. Thanks, Drew. Hi, I'm Chris. I was in FLL back in 2004 for the Mars mission game, all the way through FRC in high school. And then I'm back now volunteering. And I'm really excited about the game this year. I saw that we have some new teams as well. And so I'm going to speak mostly to them. And you just mentioned that like knowledge is power, right? Like understanding what to expect and being able to anticipate the robot game, I think is going to be a big help. And so make sure that you're reading through the resources, and please make sure that your technicians, your students are reading through the resources too. And we'll get to that in just a second as well. But the general layout is that the robot game is 2.5 minutes long. And when you're at a competition at the qualifier or state, you get 3 scored rounds. And so that can kind of help put things in perspective for your technicians, so you can keep their cool while they're at the mat. And just remember, you know, this round counts, but we're learning. Maybe we can come back in the next round and make more points if we're missing something right now. And so you got multiple chances to score your highest score and compete that way. So please practice the robot game with a timer, with your technicians, and make sure that they're practicing those teamwork and coordination skills, because again, like Drew mentioned, this isn't just a robot competition. This is a teamwork competition. And now I think the last 2 years, gracious professionalism is going to be on your robot rubric as well. And so referees will be looking for that. And please remember that the coach is at the line with the rest of the team, but not at the table with the technicians. So you can cheer and you can cheerlead and you can shout encouragement and tips, but the technicians need to be operating the game on their own. I know that can be hard to simulate sometimes in a classroom, but that's going to be how it is at the qualifier and at state. And then just to mention that techs can ask referees for help reaching a robot or robot part. This happens sometimes because the mat can be a little large for some students. So you have your technicians keep in mind that they can say, hey, referee, would you give me the robot, please? If they need to recover it from the field for like a precision point penalty or something like that. And then the big update this year, of course, is that there are 2 home areas. And so we are first is being very clear and emphasizing that we want to really bring to the forefront that coordination and teamwork between the technicians, right? And so your technicians will be stationed at either the left or the right home, and they'll stay there throughout the game. And they need to be able to coordinate across the field with the other technicians to know how to properly manage the robot as it goes and does missions. Let's see here. The game rules have been updated as recently as I think 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so, yeah, all right. And please make sure that you're reading that. And I think it's also clarifying things about the new home area as well. Yeah, and so that's new. And just, yep, if you have questions about it, please send it in. Again, on that First Inspires resource page, there's a link at the bottom to the email address. And there's no harm in asking, right, if there's a question. And the last thing I'd like to emphasize is that scores are finalized after your technician signs off on the score sheet at the table. The referee won't be delivering a score to your team then. It goes back and is graded separately. But the outcome of the game is recorded on a score sheet and your technicians sign off on it, and then it goes away. And so it's important that your technicians know the game rules, not just like the gist of the missions, but the rules that impact how it's scored, so that if they see a discrepancy or if they want to point something out to the referee, they know to do that. And that's what I have written down. I guess it's kind of just a quick overview of the game for new teams and the changes for this year.
Taylor, do you know of anything else robot game wise to bring up?
Not that I can think of.
Chris, what are some of the most common, like, I don't want to say mistakes, but like just things you notice from teams that, oh man, if you knew about this, you wouldn't be doing this right now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think one of the big ones is the dichotomy of precision points, especially in the past couple of years. The first precision point is free. You don't lose any points. And so your technicians keeping that in mind. Again, these are maybe tools that can help your technicians keep their cool under pressure. Is that the first time you have to interrupt the robot, it's okay. You haven't lost any points yet. And even when you do, it's not a huge hit. And so have your technicians know how to look at what points are we going to get by resetting and starting again. And maybe we want to leave the robot out there and just let the timer run out if we're really close or down to the wire and don't have time for another mission that will make more points than the precision penalty. But knowing the robot game for the technicians is important. And again, it's because we want to teach them all those excellent critical thinking skills, attention to detail, and being able to work under a little bit of pressure too.
Speaking of another question I will follow up with then, what if the board is not properly reset before the start of my match and I play it anyway?
Excellent point. If the board is not reset properly, your technicians need to point it out to our referees. Of course, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that it is reset properly. But it happens. And so please make sure your technicians are looking at the mat before it starts. There's a setup period where they're getting their equipment loaded onto the field. And they can also request that a referee operate a mission model out on the field and make sure that it's working properly. Most years, there's at least one model that we notice is particular. And so it's okay to ask the referee to do that. Please don't have your technicians do that on their own, because we want to make sure that the referees are in control of the state of the field when it starts. But yeah, they need to be looking at that as well. And they're going to help our referees make sure the field is set up properly. If they start playing the game, it's in motion, it's happening. They're going to get scored with how the field is set up that way.
See, Taylor, I know you've had some experience reffing. What are some things that you remember?
I mean, I think just the biggest thing is the signing off on the score sheet. Coaches don't get to take the score sheet and look at it and run through it. Like, coaches are not going to see the score sheet. The ref is right there with the technicians going through it. So those kids need to know, and the ref will go through it with them real quick. So the kids need to know and not just blindly say, okay, and sign it and run off. Like, they need to be familiar with the way the score sheet looks and what's being filled out, and like knowing, hey, we should get these points or shouldn't get these points. Like, they need to know. And then before they sign off on it, that's their time to raise concern with the referee if they think something's wrong or they have a question. Because once they sign off on it, that's it.
One of the things that Chris alluded to was that our score sheets do not have points on them. They just are a checklist of did you do this, did you do this, did you do this? And every single time there's been an issue at a competition, it's been because a team saw their score after the score sheet got signed off, and their score was not what they thought their score should have been. And every single time, it's been a matter of the team misinterpreted points, not the referees scored it wrong or it got input wrong. So that's one of the reasons we don't do the calculation at the table, is because we don't want to be worrying about, an arithmetic error. We're going to let the scoring software take care of that. One of the things that Chris also pointed out that I want to make sure everybody who watches this is aware of is one of the mission models does have different building instructions now. The windmill, the wind turbine does have a slightly different build than it did in the instructions that were released on day one. These were updated sometime in late September, I think, maybe early October. But if you're one of the teams that has run into the issue of the energy units don't always come out as easily as you'd like them to, this is supposed to mitigate most of that. So be aware that when you get to state, or when you get to your qualifiers, I should say, that the wind turbine will be built according to these instructions, not to the instructions that were released on August 2nd. Chris, is there anything else you want me to pull up and show?
I think that's all the big stuff. And again, not just for that mission model, but for all of the mission models, it's probably worthwhile having a team member go through and just ensure that they're correct. Because if you're practicing against it and it doesn't match our field at the qualifier and state, that has happened before, and it's preventable, and it's a little tragic because it hurts the team and it doesn't have to. So just make sure you're practicing with the same models we are, and following those instructions carefully when assembling them.
I was going to say one of the other things that I'm not sure where it is in the rules right now, but there will be different conditions at the qualifier than you have at home. It's not going to be exactly the same. We can't guarantee that you're going to be playing and practicing under the exact same conditions. So part of the engineering challenge, right, is being able to compensate for that variability. And I know many people have seen that. Chris, you've probably seen that firsthand a fair bit.
Oh yeah, and a robust robot handles it pretty well. But that actually leads to another thing, is that I think this is much less of an issue in recent years, but have the technicians also look at the map, make sure the mat is in the correct position on the table, and also that it's flat enough for the robot to navigate it successfully. And again, the team members assembling the fields will do their best to make sure it's already like that, but it's good to have visibility on it when you get up to the field. Make sure your technicians are looking at it, checking it out.
All right. Well, so that about does it for what we have pre-prepared. If anybody has any questions, or if Taylor or Chris, you have anything you want to add now that we can go into, now's a good time.
I think that covers it for me.
Well, if there are no questions, we will adjourn a little early then. This should be uploaded to the YouTube channel pretty shortly. And there's no email next week, but on the November 28th email, there will be a link to this, and we'll probably post it in the Discord too. Well, if you attended tonight, thank you. If you're coming virtually after the recording, we're happy to have you. But let us know if you have any questions leading up to your events.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Good luck, teams.